Let's get our Kenya market update with Mbithe Muema. He's equity research analyst at Renaissance Capital. He's with us in Nairobi. Many thanks for coming on the program. Let's start off with the Nairobi Securities Exchange, dropping again another half of a percentage point. What is affecting activity?
Thank you for having me on your show. I think what we've seen on the NSE this week has been a downward trend on the indices, and this is largely because most of the foreign companies that are invested in the NSE have been largely out of the market for the last 2 days. I mean, turnover was up yesterday, but that was more of bookovers with funds moving shares from one account to another account as opposed to actual trading. Most of these funds are largely out trying to assess the impact of Greece on the Eurozone and what that would mean for their funds in terms of redemptions, which would mean we actually expect slightly lower activity on the NSE and a downward trend on the indices, at least for the next 2 or 3 days before the end of the week. One
of the surprising things the market got yesterday was the results out of Centum Investments, a dip in profitability of 48% because of that bear run. The market didn't take this too well.
I think this was definitely not expected because, as you had mentioned earlier, the CMA expects you to actually come to the market and inform the market of such a dire performance. So, of course, the 48% was not taken positively by the market, and the share price was actually down 5% on a day-to-day basis yesterday. However, management is very keen on the underlying assets that it holds in terms of real estate and the unlocked potential in terms of private equity. And it's important to remember that they actually exited a portion of their investments in Longhorn and in UAP. Some of these investments would actually be reported as realized gains in this year's profitability, which could actually be a better position in terms of a year-on-year basis.
So you're still confident about the long-term prospects of the stock?
Yes, the long-term prospects are good, and I think what's important for one to note is if you're looking to get into some of the commodity markets in Nairobi, some of the commodity plays, some of the companies that are selling beverages like Qual, for instance, then you'd be looking to look at Centum, because essentially you can be able to access this private equity kind of investments directly.
A profit warning we had yesterday was from KenolKobil, the listed oil marketer, saying its profitability will take a significant dent, especially because of forex losses. What are you reading in this?
Ooh, that's not good for them, especially at the point where they're negotiating with Puma to acquire a sizable stake from some of the shareholders. Information just in is that the suspension has actually been lifted. So, of course, we expect a downward trend on the price today. And what this means for the acquisition of Puma of part of the shareholding of this company is that they probably may go back to the table and renegotiate the entry price level for Puma as a strategic holder of this company. So, overall, not positive for this company in the short run, which is today's trading.
One of the companies coming on the stock market is CAC Insurance. Reports out in Kenya today saying the investors, at least the main ones anyway, will be barred from selling of the company stock for the next 5 years after listing. It's been valued at about 7.7 billion shillings. So this is a good trend, isn't it?
It's a good trend and nothing new. I think this has always been the trend for companies that are listed, because you want to give the investors or new investors a bit of confidence, telling them that the executive team that's on board is actually sure of the strategy that they're pushing through and actually believing in this company to be able to hold the company for at least 5 years or whatever defined period. So nothing new there, and actually an essence of building up on the confidence for the would-be new investors.
And somebody else that needs confidence right now is national carrier Kenya Airways, after its profit dip and also the less than good results from the rights issue. Now KLM, one of its principal shareholders, saying it will be focusing a lot more on Africa, and that means maybe a bit more investment in Kenya Airways, which would be perhaps one of its flagship companies in the region. So that does look like some bit of good news, isn't it?
Not necessarily. I guess you could look at it from different angles. I'd choose to oppose you on this one because following the rights issue, KLM has become now the second largest shareholder. Prior, it was the largest shareholder. So what this means is if Etihad, through KLM, is looking to get into Africa aggressively, they may not necessarily have a huge strategic holding in terms of what Kenya Airways is able to do locally and also within the region, because they'd actually have to be playing along with the government, who's the largest shareholder. The fact that KLM is also looking to get into this continent, of course, is a positive, because if they agree in terms of pricing, in in terms of how they're going to be sharing the routes, etc., then that would be an uplift for Kenya Airways. But I think overall the operating environment for aviation companies, Kenya Airways notwithstanding, is a very tough environment. We expect to see a lot of volatility in terms of air travel uptake, and also in terms of the cost structure for these companies. So not a very good position for Kenya Airways at this point in time.
And the new frontier appears to be the budget airline kind of business. Kenya Airways has jumbo jet still planned. London is coming here the big way. They already have, they had Fly 540, rather there's been a development with Fly 540 in the ownership of that. So this is expanding.
It's expanding, but then, you know, it takes time before you can actually get your planes on board in terms of getting the new planes for jumbo jet and then getting this into the new routes and actually getting the utilization from the people who'd be utilizing these routes. So probably another 18 months or so before you can begin to see the impact of such a strategic move by the carrier, which in the meantime means that there could probably be increased competition from existing carriers like Fly 540 and Jetlink and likes like that, which are actually very good in terms of doing short-term routes within the region.
All right, the shilling finally remained a bit flat yesterday, but an interesting one is that because of the weakening shilling over the past months, this has actually lifted Nairobi as one of the least expensive cities to do business, at least dropping 14 places. So it's both good and bad. Good in the short term, because I think everybody now, as you mentioned, is looking at East Africa. Yes.
Kenya is a gateway for East Africa. Nairobi is a gateway. So if it's a good place to do business, then I think the risk that most of the international investors would be looking out for is the political risk come the elections next year, and perhaps the impact of excessive spending, which is something that we've probably been underestimating with the current budget projections, etc. So I think the fact that the currency has been stable, and that's a key focus for the central bank, is definitely a positive for doing business within the region.